Hi, well, thank you guys for joining for this month's expert series talk with Alexis Diaz. I'm super excited that you guys are going to be able to hear her research that she did for her master's program. So I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of background information on her. So Alexis is a first-year PhD student in the Tuljapurkar Lab. Sorry, I probably butchered that. At Stanford University. Her goal is to study demography and the eco-evolutionary dynamics of wildlife and human populations by using structured population models in the past. Alexis has studied her dynamics of health within social populations using a non-human primate system. Currently, she is investigating reproductive outputs of Antarctic Weddell seals in collaborations with Jay Rotella from University of Montana. I also want to mention that Alexis is an amazing person. I am so blessed to be able to call her my friend. So I'm just like super excited that she's going to be able to share her research with you guys today. With that, I will leave it to Alexis.
Oh, thank you so much, Anita. Um, yeah, so thank you all for joining on this night. Hopefully in the future I can present more on my current PhD work, but for tonight at least, I'm going to talk more about the work I did at Cal State Long Beach, which was supported by an NSF grant. And so we're currently in the process of publishing a few papers on this work in the next few months. And the first paper we're working on right now is titled Individual Differences in Socio-Cognitive Traits in Semi-Free-Ranging Rhesus Macaques. And so before I get into these socio-cognitive traits, I wanted to give a shout out to my lab during this time, the Quantitative Ecology Lab that's led by Dr. Reza Hernandez Pacheco, who was a great advisor and is still a great, amazing collaborator. And she works with this primate system. It does a lot of biological and demographic work on them. And so the lab is actually still collecting data on this work. So there's still a part of a larger study being done through this lab. And so the larger goal of this whole project is to advance our understanding of health inequality dynamics through improved demographic modeling. And so this project, at least during the time I was working on it, consisted of three major parts. So the first part was to track individual health each year. And then we wanted to test for any health inequalities between individuals in this population. And with these results, we wanted to then build an advanced demographic models that can be expanded to human health studies. And so the work was done on this island called Cayo Santiago. That's provisioned by the Caribbean Primary Research Center. It's a relatively small island southeast of Puerto Rico, but it's very important because it's home to over 1,000 rhesus macaque monkeys. And these monkeys have been monitored daily by the staff for over 70 years. So they have a big demographic data set on each individual. So we know when they're born, when they died, how many offspring they have, and who their social partners are. So we have this amazing data set that researchers love working on. And they're particularly great for our project because they're habituated to human observers. So I went out to the field and it was relatively easy to collect data on them because they're habituated to humans. So I was able to get somewhat close to them and test them. And I was able to track them as well. And so I don't know if you can see behind me, one of the monkeys has a tattoo notch on her chest. And so with those tattoos, we're able to identify individuals. And so I was able to get close to them and to know what individual I tested. And also there is no attrition, meaning that a monkey can't just walk out of my study unless, of course, they die. So it made it really easy to test them over the course of 2 years. And so speaking of attrition, I did want to highlight that this is one of the major limitations in human health studies. This occurs when there's a lot of dropouts from disadvantaged individuals. For example, someone of low income has to go to work or has other priorities rather than participating in a clinical health study, which is why a lot of human health studies end up sampling more advantaged groups and can potentially lead to biased and inaccurate health results. And so this is something that's very common in the United States. We see a lot of the health results being more biased towards white men. And so unfortunately, if you're not in that group, the results don't really reflect your true health. And so it's very hard to study health in human populations because of attrition. And so then we should really be asking ourselves if these health studies are accurately depicting health dynamics for these disadvantaged groups. And so we're lucky enough to be able to study this better in the monkey population. And we're able to study any types of health inequalities because they themselves do experience inequalities, particularly through their social rank. And so this population is structured into ranks. So there are high rank and low rank monkeys. For the high rank monkey, you can think of these as the Kim Kardashians of the population. So they have all these resources, they have more access to food, so they gain a lot of weight, and they have more access to partners, which can help groom them and they can stay healthy. So they have all these resources that allow them to potentially live longer and healthier lives compared to the low rank individuals. And so the low rank individuals, unfortunately, get the last picks of food. Sometimes they get kicked off the islands, and so they're more of the lonely monkeys of the population. And so because of these groups that form in this population, there can be some potential health inequalities happening there, which is something we want to test for once we collect enough data for that. And so going into the first part of the project, we want to track individual health each year. And so we actually measured cognitive health in two metrics. So that was using social attention and gaze following. And both of these cognitive metrics are very important for psychological aging studies, particularly because they test for theory of mind. And so this is when an individual is able to perceive knowledge states of others, including their goals and intentions, without verbally communicating. For example, if you have two kids playing and one of the kids makes a sad facial expression, then the other kid should be able to interpret that emotional state without actually communicating with each other. So just by looking at the face. And so this is a measure of social attention that psychologists can use to measure health state in children. And so again, they're very important for psychological aging studies. They have been used to measure autism during early life in human children. And we are lucky enough that both of these metrics have been expressed in the Cayo Santiago rhesus macaques. So Dr. Rosati is one of our collaborators, and Dr. Rosati is a psychologist who has performed these studies in the monkeys and has shown that they express both of these skills. And in case I didn't convince you enough, I want to show you how humans have used both of these metrics to measure for health in children. So these psychologists for many years have been using eye tracking to check if children are on the spectrum and show any signs of autism. And similarly, they use cues on eye tracking for gaze following to measure health. In this case, you have an experimenter and a subject. And so here the experimenter makes eye contact with the baby, and then he looks away, and the psychologists are interested in whether or not the baby can follow gaze. And so if the subject does follow gaze, then that's usually considered a healthy response because they're able to interpret these cues from their social environment. And so Dr. Rosati performed similar experiments in these monkeys. And to measure social attention, she used this method called socioemotional sensitivity. It's named socioemotional because they're presenting different emotional expressions to subjects. And they present these as form of pictures for a total of 10-second trial. And what we're recording here is their looking time. So how many seconds did they spend looking at these faces? So I want to show you an example of trial one. So this is me presenting the image of a female neutral face. And then this is how we recorded their response. And so the camera was always focused on their face so that we can get a good view of their eyes. So we made sure they were looking at the box before we presented the photo. And if you pay close attention, you can see that she puts her attention on this photo and then becomes disinterested. So this is an example of trial two. So now I'm going to show her the same female, but she's producing a threat face. So myself and a second coder very carefully analyzed these videos, and we recorded their looking time. So how long or how many seconds they spent looking at these images for. And so the original study found that looking time decreases with age. And so the juveniles or the teenagers of the population looked the longest at these images, and that declined as they got older. And so one of the major assumptions of this study was that looking longer is considered healthy. So the longer an individual looks, the healthier they are. And then gaze following we follow similar methods to the human study in that we grab the attention of our subjects and then we look away. In this case, we look up and we're interested in whether or not the subject follows gaze with us. So this is an example of how each trial functioned. Yeah, so I looked up and the female looked up with me. And this is an example on how we recorded their response. And again, we wanted to focus on their head and on their eyes. So this female actually looked up twice. I don't know if you caught that, but she is a very cute female and she was one of my favorite monkeys on the island. So for gaze following, we also see that the juveniles show the greatest response. So they're more likely to look up, and this response declines with age. And so another major assumption of this project is assuming that gaze following is healthy. So if a monkey does look up with us, then they are considered to be healthy for that year. And so one of the most important steps in data collection is that we needed to collect data at least once every year. So this meant that I had to collect or test as many individuals as I could the first year. And then the second year, I had to basically walk around and find the individual again to retest them. And this is very important because we really want to see any changes or stability in the responses. And so after I collected data for 2 years, the aim is to test if a monkey's performance in year 1 was predictive of their performance in year 2. But in order to measure this, we first had to make sure that individuals survived. And so survival decreases with age, which is not a big surprise. But individuals did have to survive the following year so that I can find them again and retest them. So the result I'm going to show you are data for 2 years. And so I modeled looking time in year 2022 as a function of looking time in year 2021. And this is the result for trial 1, so the female neutral phase. And we found that individual performance is predictive, meaning that if an individual did really well in 2021, they also performed better than the rest of the population in 2022. For example, if we look at the extreme of individuals that performed perfectly and looked at 10 seconds at the photo, then they also performed very well the following year at around 4 seconds. So that looking time certainly decreased, likely as an effect of age, but they still performed better than the rest of the population. And we found similar results for gaze following. And so it looks that individuals who gaze followed the first year were also more likely to follow gaze the following year. And so overall, we're starting to see a pattern in that individual performance might be predictive. And so now that we know this information, in the future, we hope to analyze more on how these cognitive health metrics are associated to survival and reproduction. Since this is a demographic study, we certainly have to check for associations between health and vital rates. And so we know that cognition is associated to survival in humans. So in humans, individuals who are more cognitively impaired have a higher mortality risk than individuals who are at that normal baseline measure of health. And the results for reproduction are a little bit more mixed for humans, but it seems that there is somewhat of a trade-off between cognition and number of children. So this study actually found that females who have more than 4 offspring experience more levels of depression. And so it seems that there might be somewhat of a trade-off between being cognitively healthy and having offspring. And so we tested for both survival and reproduction using the data we have, and we didn't find anything for survival, but we did find something similar as humans for reproduction. So we found that reproduction is negatively associated to social attention. We found that the probability of reproducing decreased as looking time increased. For example, a female who looked at 10 seconds is going to have less children than the female who looks less. And so again, this might be related to a trade-off. If you guys have any ideas on why we might be seeing this, please let me know. We're still brainstorming on why we're seeing these patterns. At least in my perspective, I think this might have to deal with energy allocation, and that more energy is being allocated to either brain functioning or towards reproduction. So in the case that a female is allocating more energy towards reproductive processes, then they're allocating less energy towards brain functioning, which is why we're seeing this negative relationship. And unfortunately, we didn't take any physiological data on these processes, but that would be something very interesting to do in the future to see if there's any energy differences between allocating energy in both of these processes. And so we didn't have quite yet the data set or the sample size we needed to test for health inequalities. But in case you're interested, I did just want to say that there was very small evidence that low-ranked individuals might be actually looking longer than high-ranked individuals. If you remember from my previous slides ago, I said that an assumption is that looking longer is healthier. And so I had predicted that low-ranked individuals might be more disadvantaged, so they are less healthy and looking less at these pictures. But it's actually quite the opposite of what I thought it would be. We're starting to see that maybe low-ranked individuals are looking longer. This might have to deal with the fact that they need to seek out resources more than other higher-ranked individuals. So maybe paying attention to their social environment is more beneficial to low-rank individuals than to high-rank. But again, this isn't a strong association. We still need to collect a lot more data to test these inequalities between the ranks. So to conclude our major findings, we are starting to see that individual response is predictive. So if monkeys performed well the year before, then they're likely to perform well the following year. And it seems that reproduction is negatively associated to the social attention metric. And so these are the two papers we are currently developing. But in the future, we hope to build more advanced demographic models with this information. Particularly, we're interested in building an integral projection model. And so IPMs are currently being used in ecology because we can fit continuous traits. For example, marine biologists have used them to study the size of coral reefs. Other researchers have used them to study body length and even body weight in animals, since those are continuous long variables. So we can really stretch out any variables such as looking time and check how these traits are affecting survival, reproduction, or health in a population. And we can even analyze population growth. So what trait or what level of the trait affects population growth. So there is a lot of stuff we can do with the data once we have it. And so some future directions of the lab includes, of course, testing for inequalities. So testing if social rank can predict any of these responses. And finally, we can then build these advanced demographic models so that even human health studies can apply this to their own research. So that is a quick presentation, but I didn't want to overload anyone on information. That is what we're working on right now. And I wanted to give a special thank you to the Cognitive Evolution Lab that's led by Dr. Alex Rosati. And I highly recommend going to their website and looking at the amazing cognition projects they have going on. It requires a lot of skills, creativity, and patience to carry out these experiments. And they were also a great team in the field. So shout out to them. And with that, I will leave you with baby monkeys and will answer any questions. And I'm happy to answer questions either related to this work or related to higher education. So any questions are welcome.
I have a question for you. Since you tested this between like high ranks and that ranks like low, middle, or high class rank monkeys, did you see, like, let's say for example, like a low rank monkey like the first year, but then the second year it moved up in rank? Does that change the stats on how you perform them or what you saw?
Yeah, Good question. So it's really rare to see monkeys switch their ranks. It's pretty stable, especially between the 2 years I collected data on. So the lab is currently, I believe we're going to go into our 4th year this year to collect data. So it'll be interesting after this 4th year to see if there was any changes in rank. I think it'd be interesting to see that it went from low to high. I think it's really rare for high to go to low because that means they would really have to like give up their status, which is really rare. I think it's more likely from low to jump to high. But so yeah, we see that it'll be interesting to measure their response. But at least for the 2 years that I collected data on, I don't believe I saw many changes in rank. But if we're assuming that low rank individuals might be less healthy, and if they switch to higher rank, then maybe their cognition definitely might change. I'm not sure if it will change in a good direction or in a bad direction. But yeah, we're certainly will want to explore that later on. And I'll let you know what happens once we have that data.
Okay, thank you. Alex in the chat is saying, who are the PIs you're working with at Stanford?
Yes, so my current PI is Tulja. So his full name is Sripad Tuljapurkar. It's kind of hard, so we call him Tulja, but he's more of a demographer. But we are collaborating with Jay Rotella, who Anita mentioned in the beginning, and he works with Antarctic Weddell seals. So we're borrowing some of his data to explore reproduction. I'm also going to collaborate with Stephanie Juno-Rear, who also is studying Antarctic species. She does more work with seabirds, so we still have to talk with her about the data, but hopefully I get to. My goal is just to do a comparative analysis with Antarctic species, so we'll probably be collaborating with other people. But yeah, it's also kind of complicated because at Stanford, your 1st year committee will likely change. So they just call it 1st year committee because they're just there your 1st year, but then it probably will switch around after. Yeah.
Is there Alex says that you're his academic hero.
Thank you.
And he says thank you, so impressive.
Thanks, Alex.
Um, I had another question. Is there, I think you might have said it, but I might have missed it. Is there a specific reason why you used the neutral female face? And would you guys consider using a neutral male face? Or is there a reason why you did not use the male face?
Yeah, so the first 2 trials were female and the last 2 trials were male. And it was the same order of facial expressions. So we're getting the strongest result for the first trial, which is the female neutral face. And I think it's just because it's the first trial, because after that they show habituation, so the response is weaker, which means basically they stop paying attention. They don't care after the first trial. And we also just have more data from the first 2 trials of the female photos, because sometimes they just walk away after the first trial. And so we just get more participants for the first trial. And so since the original study used this order of photos, we wanted to follow that. And we did the analysis for all 4 trials. And yeah, we're just finding the strongest results for the first trial of the female neutral face. So yeah, it's a lot of work trying to analyze it for each trial, but so far we're saying that is the first trial that's more important.
Have you guys tried doing, instead of doing like a neutral face, have you guys doing like maybe like a angry face or like attack face or something, what the response would be?
Yeah, so the second photo is a threat face, so they're showing like a grimace, so they're showing their teeth and like they look angry. And the original reason of doing that for the study Alex did before was to check if how long they looked at these threat faces to compare that to humans. Because for humans, we actually look longer at friendly faces as we age. And so she wanted to test if that was true for the primates. And she found that the monkeys actually look longer at threat faces as they age. And so maybe it just has to do with their social environment that they have the social rank going on. They just need to focus more on the threat faces. But yeah, so we also show them the threat faces. But I think we did find some associations for the threat faces. But as it relates to survival and reproduction, I believe those were only related to the first trial.
Okay,
But yeah,
thank you.
yeah, it's all very mixed results for all trials, but that's why we just want to focus on the first trial because it's better interpretations for that one too.
Okay.
Very easier.
So Marilyn asked on the chat, when will the study results be published?
Ooh, I will let you know. Thank you. Hopefully February.
Oh, it's very close.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting because a lot of primatologists don't study individual cognition from one year to the next. They usually just do one big study 1 year, and then they just end it after that once they find a trend. But this is the first time we're actually measuring it, like tracking their response every year. So I think it'll be, yeah, really cool to share that with you guys whenever we have it published.
Yeah, definitely let me know so I can share that with everyone. Okay, Jessica is asking, do females with higher rank reproduce more? Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, thanks for asking that. So it seems that they do reproduce more in the sense that they I believe they also reproduce slightly sooner than the rest of the females. I'm not sure what the biological process behind that is. They do get more access to food, water, shade, and they also have a lot of monkeys grooming them. So I think just that overall helps their health, so they're able to uh, have the baby sooner than other females, than the lower rank ones. Um, And I believe they've been testing this on reproduction for a really long time. Um, and yeah, they found that they've reproduced more. Although there's some debates on that, but yeah, they do tend to have more babies than the low rank ones.
Okay, and then she also adds, if she remembers correctly, females with higher rank look for less time, and females that reproduce more also look for less time. So she was curious if it was related at all.
So it seemed that it wasn't significant. So we don't um, but the trend was that higher rank looked less at the photos. And the trends on the reproduction was that the females that looked longer had less babies. Um, I can't remember. I think in the future, once we have more data on the social rank, we can include that as a factor for this model. I didn't include it this time because there wasn't enough uh, data on ranks. So fortunately, we do have to collaborate with other people to get data on social rank, and there wasn't enough data. So we're just going to try to collect more individuals who are in that study to get rank information. But it could be the case that if a high rank female looks less, then she might have more babies. That can certainly be some type of interaction there. And so I think what you're saying is that the low rank females would fall on this end. Oh wait, no, sorry. The low rank females who look more might have lower reproduction. And then the higher rank females who look less might have more reproduction. So I think that's what you're saying, and that could totally be a possibility.
She says, very interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Marilyn is also asking, will the primates be studied for long-term trends?
Yeah, so I'm not too sure how many years the grant is set up for. This year is going to be the 4th year of back-to-back data. And they're also collecting physiological data, which is a little bit harder to interpret because there's a lot of uncertainty in the physical data. But yeah, so right now we have cognition data, a little bit of physiological data, and then they're trying to test associations between psychological and physiological health. They didn't find any results for that currently, but again, like in the future, hopefully we do see some associations with more data. So yeah, it's really long-term study the lab has going on here. But yeah, hopefully we see trends in the future.
Thank you. Is there any more questions for Alexis?
Yeah, thank you guys for the questions. They were all amazing.
Jess says, great talk and love to hear about your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there isn't any more questions for Alexis, thank you so very much for giving a talk for us today, Alexis. I really do appreciate it, and it's great to hear like the work that you did. And it's plus you get to see cute monkeys. Um I really do appreciate definitely get to learn a lot in how like this study could be reflective on human health as well. So that's really interesting that, this study is very important. Um, and with that, I would like to thank you guys also for being here today, for listening for today's talk. And hopefully, we get to see you guys for next month for our next expert series talk. It's going to be with Marjorie Howard for World Wetlands Day to celebrate World Wetlands Day. So just keep an eye out for that information, okay? And thank you so very much, you guys, for being
Nice.
here today.
Thanks, Anita, for the invitation. And thanks
You're
everyone
welcome.
for giving your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, Alexis.
Bye. Thanks.